When the market is hot, it's especially hard for first home buyers as they see their property dreams fade away with every week that passes. However, there are some practical steps you can take to make sure you do not get left behind.
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to move it along and become homeowners. But most importantly, it is for you to become an educated home buyer.
I'm Meighan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum. But it's a good thing because between us we've got over 45 years experience to share with you and bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure you get unbiased and real information you can rely on. Allow us to guide you on your home buying journey. We want you to become an educated home buyer so that you can stop looking for your first home and actually become a proud homeowner.
We've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au, and there you'll get access to our free mini course, How to Price a Property Like a Professional. You will also find the holy grail of home buying education, Your First Home Buyer Guide, the online course for people who want to become educated home buyers. We created this for you to help you get on the right path to home ownership for your first home and beyond.
But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, we've got the boring bit, the disclaimer. You of course know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes the time to understand your personal situation. We've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording. Things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority and your trusted advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we're talking about what to do when you're faced with a competitive property market and rising prices. But before we get into that, Meighan has a very special house, and one in fact I quite like, in the video behind.
Yes, everybody, if you are watching, I'll try and describe it to you if you're not watching, but do yourself a favour. This is called the Waterfalling House in Pennsylvania in the US of A. It is designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, this was designed in the 1930s. If you can see it, there is so much going on here. It's actually partially built over a natural waterfall. You can probably pick up from my voice, I am in love with this house. Now, of course, in Brisbane, we would call this major overland flow and we'd be recommending against it. But this was specifically designed to deal with it.
So Frank Lloyd Wright is a very famous, world-famous architect. If you've never heard of him, he was a classic mid-century architect and very inspired many Australian architects as well. But also it was very low-lying, like to build in very natural settings and very low-lying and sort of to complement and be part of nature as opposed to dominate it. And this literally just sits on top of it.
It really looks like... You know, this was commissioned, I'm going to get the details wrong, but this was commissioned by a family who owned the land. Their initial budget, I think, was somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000.
I think that would have been a lot back then somehow.
Would have been a lot, but it ended up being, I think, 4 times that by the time they finished. And look, I think that's an extraordinary investment in an amazing piece of architecture.
All right, so today we're going to dive into a topic that is very relevant right now as opposed to building over waterfalls. Don't do it. Don't
This is
do
nice
it.
to look at and learn about what other people have done.
Might be a bit noisy inside the house. All right, if you've been house hunting and it feels like properties are selling before you've even got time to think, or blink, let alone blink, think, whatever.
Blink, think, brain hasn't engaged.
You are. Yes, exactly. If they're basically popping off and disappearing in front of your eyes, then you are not alone because the market's been pretty hot in a number of cities in this country.
Yeah. And we're talking today about how to successfully buy in a hot market because, you know, let's be honest, buying your first home is already tough. We know that. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. This is why we spend so much time sharing what we can with you. And when a market heats up, it can really feel like it's just absolutely impossible. So bear with us. Come on, keep going. Don't give up.
All right. Now, if you're seeing homes flying off the market and prices creeping up every week, sometimes, and it does feel that way. And in fact, when you look at the official data that comes out every week too, and you think, or every month, you think, my God, prices are continuing to rise. And then it just gets disappointing, particularly if you're in an auction area or if you're in an area that's dealing in sales that are selling very, very quickly. It can be soul destroying and very, very disappointing. And we do get it, but don't give up because there are ways to compete smartly.
Yeah, so we'll talk today about some realistic strategies to help you stay in the game and not get left behind. We're not going to sugarcoat this. This is not easy, but we are going to, and even as a buyer's agent, it is hard.
Yeah.
We have to use so many tools out of our toolkit, so many strategies to actually get purchases together. We get it, but we are going to arm you with the tools and also the mindset that you need. And this is really important.
Yeah, you need hope. You need to feel that actually it is not futile, that if you continue doing what you're doing, you're going to get there, right? So 3 takeaways before we dive in, right? The first is speed and preparation matter more than ever in a hot market. The second one is you must be confident in value. So that is sort of the pricing of properties and what properties are worth in the current market, because you won't have time to hesitate. So you've got to, it's all preparation, really. All of this stuff is preparation. And the third thing is due diligence must still be done, in fact, even when the pressure is on. And a lot of people say, I don't have time to do due diligence. I've just got to jump in. Well, we do not agree, but it's how you go about that that's really important. And I think, too, I'm going to add one extra thing we probably should have thought about here. 4th takeaway. You've got to be looking in the right areas. When prices are moving, if you're being priced out of an area, you're going to have to pivot your search. And the sooner you do that, particularly in a hot market, the better. So I'm just going to add that as a 4th takeaway.
Nice one. All right. We've got 7 tips for you today. So knuckle down, write it down, follow the script, because these are 7 things that you can actually help yourself to do. Now, tip number 1, this is why markets are so tough for first home buyers. It's because you've got a few hurdles already. You've got borrowing limits. There's some inexperience there. And, the sooner you recognize that and open yourself up to it, the quicker this part of the process will pass. And you've also got emotions. Like everybody has emotions when we're buying. But when the market's running hot, you're actually up sometimes against cashed up buyers. So they might not have finance that needs to be satisfied or valuations that need to be done by banks. You're also up against investors. And they might have some decent equity and cash behind them. And you're also up against people who have bought and sold before, who have got a little more experience than you and know how to move quickly.
And so obviously you're going to feel this pressure and you're going to see it. But I guess I'm going to say it's not helpful to go, oh, well, it's just investors' fault that I can't get in the market, or it's just cashed up buyers or downsizers or whatever. It's completely unhelpful to focus on that. So, yes, you do have hurdles. It is difficult. You've got to accept that and just move with it, like lean into it and move with it, right? It can feel like you're constantly behind the 8 ball. Each weekend you're watching more properties sell above the price guide. Agents are telling you it's already under offer, just days after it lists. And every time it happens, it chips away at your confidence. But that's why I say you cannot focus on poor me, woe is me. You've really got to go, okay, gird your loins, get tough, because it is tough.
Yeah. And we don't want you to tap out. We want you to stay in there, because if this is the right thing for you, it doesn't matter what time in the market cycle you're in the market. It's about arming yourself and moving forward with confidence. So tip 2 is to get a step ahead. Know your area inside out. And as Veronica said earlier, it's not only knowing your own area inside out, it's knowing that you're in the right area as well. Doing the 3 Ps, the where to buy tutorial, it's $39. It'll save you potentially 3, 6, 12 months looking in the wrong area.
Yeah, because that is the number one thing that you have absolute control over is getting to know and doing and really understanding and knowing your patch. You get across those sale prices like a hawk. You track them. If you haven't downloaded our free mini course on how to price a property, there's a spreadsheet in there that you can track sale prices. And so really get in there and understand why one property sold for more than the other. What is a 3-bedroom on 400 square meters in your target area actually selling for? Not just what it's listed for, because that's what a lot of people get stuck on. They're looking at the wrong amount.
Yeah. And they're looking at the wrong things to compare. And again, that's what we teach in that free course is what are the right things to compare. I know, sometimes new students will bring something to us in Campfire and they might say, all right, well, this one's on X square meters and this one's on slightly more, but, it's got a prettier kitchen and they're not quite comparing the right things in the big scheme of things. We need to step back and say, all right, what's the street like? Is there much traffic in there? How close? What are the noise overlays? All these things matter. So important to get down to that really granular level to know your pricing. And don't just stick to the centre of the suburb you love. Like, everyone loves to be really close to the cafes and the lifestyle and the vibe. For some people, that really is part of the essence of who they are. But if you look at the second ring suburbs or those around, like open your eyes to other options. These neighbourhood areas might not have the same buzz right now that you're looking for, but they might actually be well located that you can actually visit and be close enough to enjoy the facilities and the lifestyle of your target area if you're priced out of it. You actually might be really surprised about the value that you get in those areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been in real estate now for 25 years and I literally have sold in the same suburbs my office is in now for buying, right? So I mean, we cover a greater area as buyer's agents than I did when I was a sales agent, but I can certainly see those suburbs that were seen as sort of bridesmaid suburbs or the poorer suburbs and how some of them over the 25-year period, right, but even shorter periods, it didn't go the whole 25 years, but even over, say, maybe a 10-year period, how a suburb that was always seen as a bit, I don't really want to go there. And then when enough people have to go there and it's that close to existing sort of good lifestyle areas, then you'll find the high street in those suburbs starts actually lifting up as well. Some cool cafes start opening up. There's the council invest in a nice park or whatever. So you start to see that sort of gentrification rolling through, and I've absolutely seen that. But in the meantime, you're still close enough to all the things that you know and love. The problem is that if people don't start looking outside and, their centre of the universe where they really want to be, and they keep doggedly looking at that one suburb or those two suburbs, and prices are rising, they could get priced out of those suburbs, and they could get priced out of the next suburbs while they're mucking around. So I always encourage people to be really proactive here and go, you need to get across those next ring suburbs, because if you are priced out of your area, you don't want to waste any time making that pivot. The quicker you make that pivot, the more likely you're going to get in earlier and get some value in those suburbs. So that's a really important thing to be doing to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's one of the things, it's module 5 in the course, and that is to revise and correct. And sometimes if you're going down the wrong path, it is exactly what you need to do, but you need to do it sooner rather than later so that you're not left behind.
Also, start learning which agents are undershooting their price guides and which ones underquote and which ones are straight shooters, because that stuff really matters. Now, at the same time, you can't apply a blanket percentage to every agent and go, that one underquotes by 20% every time and that one's 10 and so on. That doesn't work, but you do start to understand a general trend. And when you know your area like a hawk, you're knowing your agents like a hawk as well.
Absolutely. So tip 3 that we have today to handle a hot market is mastering auctions and pre-auction plays. Now, in a hot market, a lot of properties are going to go to auctions, particularly in the major cities, right? So some markets are auction oriented, some markets aren't. Some agents can't run an auction and they're not going to. So it might not just be the area, it's actually the agents as well. So it's you've got to keep. I remember hearing over and over and over in my 25 years in the industry, but certainly in buyer's agency, I remember hearing people say, oh, no, I won't buy at auction. And you have no idea how many properties that is going to actually exclude from your search. And when there's a real lack of supply, you are just shooting yourself in the foot. You can prepare and be ready, right? So when a lot of properties are going to auction, it can feel intimidating, but you do have options.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what's one of our property buying principles is don't let the method of sale stop you, right? And so in a hot market, and in certain markets, like Meighan was saying, the hotter the market is, you'll see more and more auctions.
Yeah.
In say Sydney and in Melbourne, inner Sydney and Melbourne, for example, pretty much everything goes to auction anyway. But in other cities and even some regional areas, you'll start to see auctions in a really hot market, a lot more than there were previously. We are big fans of a well-calibrated pre-auction offer in the right circumstances, but not in every situation. Now, I wrote an entire book about auctions called Auction Ready, right? You get it if you do the course as part of your bonuses. And if you don't want to do the course, buy the book, for God's sake. But I mean, the reality is that a lot of buyers want to avoid competition of auction, and they think that the best way to buy every property is pre-auction offer. Well, it isn't, right? If you've done your research and you know the value, a strong early offer, but at the right time, not too early, not too late, just right, can limit competition and sometimes can even take the property off the market before auction day. But this is very important for you to understand. It will not eliminate competition. And in fact, don't think that throwing an early offer guarantees your win, because you still need to prepare for counter offers or to face the auction anyway. It might be told that, no, we're not selling prior to auction, you still have to go to auction. Or it could be that there are other buyers that are just as ready as you and they start competing with you. And the problem with that, with the pre-auction offer, is that you're going blind. In fact, you don't know what the other buyer has offered. Whereas if you go to auction, you do see the buyer make the bid, right? So there's pros and cons here. And so you've got to be strategic and you've got to be really clever and careful in calibrating that pre-auction offer. But if you do that and if you study your market enough, sometimes that can lead you to success when it's a hot one.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it does go to auction, if the circumstances are not right to make a pre-auction offer, and it's really important to know when to and when not to make a pre-auction offer. But if it does go to auction, make sure you've practiced your bidding strategy. We, as buyers agents, we have a massive toolkit of bidding strategies. So it's about understanding the people, the agent, the auctioneer, the other buyers. We've done whole episodes of this. Veronica's written a book on it. We have a module half a module that's absolutely dedicated to different methods of sale, one being auction. Just go back through, listen. If you are going to buy a property as a first home buyer, you cannot and should not avoid properties just because they're going to auction. In fact, I really like buying properties at auction in hot markets because I can see exactly what the other buyers are doing, as opposed to maybe a private treaty negotiation where you've got no idea what anyone else is doing and you've just got to put your best offer forward.
That's it. And, you can think you've got a property when your offer's been accepted in private treaty and then someone else can still outbid you. So at auction, once that hammer falls, it's going to be yours. That's the beauty of it. All right. Tip number 4, be offer ready even before the first open. How's that one?
Sounds like a lot of work to do.
It is a lot of work to do.
You will kick yourself the first time you miss a property that you should have bought because you weren't ready and someone else was.
We are talking different here. We're talking about properties that are not going to auction here.
Oh, these are private treaties.
Yeah.
Good point. So
Yeah.
we talked about auction previously. These are private treaty negotiations we're talking about. Now, this is something we're seeing a lot lately, particularly in Brisbane. Properties are selling after the first open home and sometimes on the same day.
Yeah.
So it can be really quick and you're not in control of how quickly that happens. The other buyers actually are, and the seller. So if the seller decides they're going to sell to the person that puts the best offer in by 4:00 on Saturday, you've got to be part of that process and you have to be really, really ready to do that. That means doing your due diligence after you've inspected it might be too late. It might be that you've got to do it all beforehand.
And this is where knowing your patch is so good, right? You know your patch. That means you know that street, you know the aspect, you know generally the sort of surroundings, you know what's around that property. You know that, you've seen the photos, you've seen the floor plan and all the rest of it. You think, okay, if I inspect that property, and always inspect it, by the way,
Yeah.
Always, because there's always more that you get to know when you inspect a property. But if I inspect that property and I find that it's just as good as I think it's going to be, or it's exactly as I imagine it's going to be, then you just kick into, right, well, I'm prepared now, because you would have done your homework before the inspection, which means reviewing all of the available online information, requesting the contract, right? Lining up your building and pest inspector, checking your council records, your strata records if it's a unit, all of this good stuff. And it also includes talking to your lawyer about the property beforehand to make sure that you get your conditions right if you're in a private treaty area. So there's a lot of stuff to do beforehand, but that will give you an edge.
And it will make you feel prepared. So if you walk through, it feels like a lot, but if you walk through, this is actually what other serious buyers are doing. If you love it on a Saturday, you've been through, you've done all your due diligence, and you want to make an offer, but you think, I just need to wait until I do and have another conversation with the solicitor on Monday. It may not be there on Monday, and we see it over and over again. Now, this is not encouraging you to take shortcuts by any stretch of the imagination. Our team are doing our due diligence in the week leading up to the first opportunity that we get to see the property. Now, we're always trying to see it before the Saturday, but if it's Saturday, then we've done everything that we possibly can to know when we walk out of that property, is it a recommended or a non-recommended property, and how do we need to advise the buyer about how to go forward?
Yep. Now, tip number 5 is to never skip due diligence, no matter how hot the market, because that is what we hear a lot of people do, right? We hear that, I can't do it in time. And it's like the risks that you take when you do that, or when you don't do that, I should say, are just astounding. And you don't even know what those risks are, whereas we do. So we cannot stress this enough. Never buy without doing your due diligence. The pressure to act fast is real. We get that. But you still have to protect yourself.
Yeah. And every state's different. Don't forget that. We say it over and over and over again. Like, for example, in Western Australia, if you're buying under an as-is contract, it can be really risky if you haven't done the proper checks. You don't have termination rights if you find something out 2 days after the contract has been legally bound. You could be actually walking into a massive money pit. And remember, right, just remember this. There will always be another property. There will always be another one. It is about preparing yourself in advance, but not feeling so pressured in the moment to make a really risky decision that could weigh heavily on you for a very, very long time.
Yeah, look, rushing into a dud is way worse than missing out and waiting a few more weeks. So you really have to stay calm and stay smart. And we do recognise that you will be under enormous pressure to cut corners and to settle for properties that you probably wouldn't look at normally, to settle for buying without doing a building your pest inspection. They are crazy things to do. They're very reactive to the short-term pressures, which we recognise are huge. But you act in haste, repent at leisure. Is that what it is?
That's it.
We don't want you repenting.
Yeah. There will always be something that you can't find out. But as long as you know what that is and you've made a really well-informed decision about the risk, then you have a bit more control over your decisions. Now, tip 6 is best and final offers. Again, we are talking about either private treaty negotiations, or if it's an auction, a pre-auction offer where there's other people involved in the offer situation as well. You've got to be ready. You just have to be ready. Information is your friend here, knowing process, asking the right questions. In a hot market, you'll often hear the phrase, we're going to best and final offers. Know what that means and know how genuinely this is your opportunity to either buy or not buy the property. That's your cue to act quickly, but not blindly. Like, just don't throw everything. Don't throw the kitchen sink, everything that is in your approval. Don't throw everything at it, because it might not be worth it.
No, so you've got to, and it might be that you have to, but not without checking first, is it worth it? Yeah. Is it worth it to you? And really thinking all of that through, because with those best and finals, you usually don't get a second bite of the cherry. Like, sometimes the agent will say best and final and they'll still come back to you, but you're not going to rely on that. You are not going to rely on that. So before you even walk into a property, have a firm grip on its value. Research similar properties, recent sales, land sizes, renovation standards, all that stuff, so that you can make a fair but competitive offer when the time comes. And we have a free course that teaches you how to do this. So jump in there. It's literally homebuyeracademy.com.au/free course. And if you haven't already downloaded that, you're crazy. We're not even asking for any money for that. God, it's good. We get good feedback on that a lot.
I want you to go in with your eyes wide open, but also in a position of mutual respect. Now, I want to really outline what that means. Don't lowball, okay? In a hot market, underbidding gets you ignored.
Yep.
You will be ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Show the agent you're serious, but only go to a number that you have set, that you understand is fair and you can afford.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't control this market. And I think people who use lowball offers, they're trying to, in some futile way, say, I've got control, but you don't. Right? And the quicker you recognize that, the easier you're going to find it. Because if you keep fighting for control and you keep getting beaten down, it ain't going to help you. It's not going to help you rise above and get a home, which is what you're after, right?
Do you remember one of our early students, Monica?
I know you're going to talk about.
And he just, every session with him, he would just say, it's not worth that. It's not worth that.
Those people are idiots.
It's not worth that. And I'm saying to him, Mike, like, you're fighting a one-man battle against the market. You've just got to accept that that's how it is. And the moment his mindset changed, they bought not long after that, but he just wanted to fight the market the whole way. And it can't happen. A single person, even a group of people, can't influence the market.
So, which leads us to tip 7, which is mindset matters, right? Staying in the game, knowing what you can control, what you can't control. Hot markets are mentally exhausting, right? They are. And they're debilitating and depleting, and there's FOMO, rejection, the feeling that you're running out of time, you're getting left behind. It's awful, right? We know it's awful.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you prepare properly, you stand out as a smart, ready, low-risk buyer, and agents do notice that.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay strategic. Stick to your budget and don't get swept up in the heat. Your time will come. So if you're buying in a hot market, here's what you really want to remember. Preparation is your secret weapon. Veronica said it at the start. Mm-hmm. Be ready to act fast but smart. And if you miss out, don't panic. Keep learning. Take that in. Understand, it's an improving process. You're not doing this every day. You're not a buyer's agent that is doing this day in, day out. You're going to keep learning and you're going to use that information in the next opportunity that you have.
Everything has to be looked at as a learning opportunity. Every loss is painful, but the quicker you get back on the horse and quicker you learn those lessons and keep moving forward, the better off you're going to be.
Have you joined our Facebook group yet? It's called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia, and it's your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions. You'll get answers from us, which means you can be sure you're not going to get led down the garden path.
And a quick note, you might think that we cover everything you need to know in these podcasts. A word of warning, we do not. We just scratch the surface here. If you really want to be an educated first home buyer, you do need to learn all of the steps and how to do everything in the right order. And that will actually help you master this and remain in control.
Yep. Your First Home Buyer Guide course is a small investment of $990, and you get direct access to us to help guide you through your negotiations. You can share a link of a property you're thinking of buying, and we can help you work out whether it's A, B or C grade or an absolute no-go zone. Now, trust me, you'll buy better with our guidance and you'll overpay by a lot more than $1,000 if you don't know what you're doing.
In this episode, we've only touched on a tiny part of the huge amount of things you need to know to become an educated first home buyer. There is so much more for you to do. You can learn all of the steps in the right order and avoid all of the mistakes that others have made in our 10-step online course for first home buyers.
If you'd like to learn more about the right process and avoid making rookie errors, become an educated home buyer. Head over to the website, check out Your First Home Buyer Guide, the course that we have created for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. It helps other people find us. And of course, I know it's a bit cringy, but we're going to ask for 5 stars. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who you know are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with more priceless stuff.